The colony ship Horizon's Edge drifted silently near the orbit of Zethira, a planet barely touched by human exploration. Its surface was covered with thick forests of towering alien trees, their leaves glimmering faintly under the planet's twin suns. No one knew what truly lurked beneath the dense canopy. The colonists, anxious and fearful, had sent distress signals for weeks. Each report told a similar story. Crews disappearing, supply posts destroyed, and strange claw marks etched into the ground. The common thread of fear ran deeper than just the danger itself. Something in the shadows was watching, learning, and hunting. It had become a legend before anyone truly understood what it was. Commander Elias Ward had spent most of his life on frontier worlds. From a young age, he learned to survive in harsh environments where human presence was rare and danger was constant. Unlike the colonists, he did not panic. Fear was useful only when controlled, and he had mastered it over decades. He reviewed the latest transmission from a remote supply station. The message was fragmented, full of static and terror. The voice of the officer reporting the attack cracked, trembling with every word. It moves faster than we can see. Takes them one by one. Then, silence. Elias knew he had to act. Waiting would only cost more lives. He prepared his suit, reinforced with adaptive armor that could absorb energy strikes and provide life support for extended periods. His pulse rifle hummed with readiness, and he carried a motion scanner capable of detecting even the slightest movement in the dense forest. Every tool was calibrated. Every measure was calculated. He was not going to fight blindly. As the dropship descended onto Zethira's surface, the wind from the alien forests whipped around the vehicle. Strange scents, earthy and metallic, filled the air. The colonists who had accompanied him shivered in fear, their faces pale under the suit visors. Elias gave them instructions calmly, his voice steady. Stay close. Watch the sensors. Move only when I give the signal. Many had heard the rumors, the whispers of a predator no one could confront. Their hands trembled, not from a cold, but from dread. Elias understood their fear. He had felt it before, but he also knew fear could be harnessed, and for now, it needed to be disciplined. The first hours in the jungle were quiet, almost eerily so. The massive trees blocked most of the sunlight, leaving the ground in partial shadow. Twisting vines clung to the trunks, and thick moss muffled the sound of footsteps. Every noise, from a bird-like creature's screech to the rustle of leaves, set the colonists on edge. Elias, however, moved like he belonged there, observing patterns, noting the faint impressions in the mud, the subtle shifts in the foliage. Something had passed this way recently, something intelligent. Suddenly, a low growl vibrated through the air. It was not loud, but it carried a weight that made the hairs on Elias's arms rise. The colonists froze. He raised a hand, signaling them to remain silent. The motion sensors on his wrist blinked sporadically, registering movement too fast for the eye to catch. Then, from the shadows between two massive tree trunks, glowing eyes appeared. The predator was watching. It moved faster than any human could follow. One moment it was hidden, the next it appeared briefly. A blur of dark scales and sinewy muscles. Elias took a steady breath and fired a single pulse shot. The energy beam cut through the misty air, but missed. The predator was gone, leaving no trace except the faint rustling of leaves and the echo of its low growl. He scanned the area, noting the patterns of its movement. It was intelligent, testing him, probing his reaction. The rest of the day was a tense dance of observation. Elias tracked the predator through indirect signs, broken branches, faint footprints, scratches on trees, and disturbed foliage. Each clue built a map in his mind of how it moved. He began to understand that the predator was not attacking at random. It studied its prey, learned their habits, and struck with precision. The colonists whispered among themselves, speaking of leaving, of returning to the ship, but Elias stopped them. "We stay. Fear is a weapon only if you let it control you. Watch, learn, survive. Night fell quickly. The alien jungle became a world of shadows, where shapes seemed alive and every sound was amplified. Elias set up a temporary camp in a clearing. Motion sensors were positioned in a circular perimeter. He placed a few energy traps, devices meant to slow or temporarily incapacitate the predator without killing it. He did not want unnecessary death. Not yet. Understanding came before aggression. As the team rested, Elias remained alert. He observed the darkness, listening for the slightest disturbance. Then he heard it. A movement too precise, too silent to be random. The predator approached. One of the colonists gasped, and the creature reacted instantly. It had learned from their presence, adapting. Elias raised his pulse rifle, aiming with careful precision. The predator lunged with incredible speed, appearing from nowhere. He fired, the energy beam striking close to the creature, making it pause. In that instant, he studied its anatomy: sinewy limbs, a lean muscular frame, eyes that glimmered with almost human-like intelligence. The predator vanished before he could strike again. But this encounter was different. Elias understood something critical. It did not attack out of mindless hunger. It respected challenge. Survival would not be about brute force. It would be about understanding, adapting, and confronting fear directly. Over the next several hours, Elias continued his observation. He recorded patterns of its movement, noting when it preferred the shadows, how it reacted to light, the faint vibrations preceding its attacks. Each interaction, though terrifying, gave him more insight. The colonists began to see him not as a fool rushing into danger, but as a leader who could face the unimaginable and survive. They whispered among themselves, some inspired, some still terrified, but all now aware that the human before them was different. By the end of the first day, Elias had established a rhythm: observe, record, anticipate. The predator had tested him multiple times, appearing and disappearing, each time gauging his response. He had survived where others had fallen, and the colonists now looked to him for hope. Fear remained in the jungle, thick and suffocating. But for the first time, there was a spark of courage. Elias sat by the campfire that night, reviewing his observations. He understood the stakes. One mistake could cost lives, not just his own. But he also understood something else. Humans were not prey. They could adapt, they could learn, they could confront even the most terrifying of creatures. And he would show the colony that the predator, feared by all, was not invincible. The alien night continued around them, full of sounds and shadows, but Elias remained calm. He planned the next steps, how he would use the jungle itself as a tool, turning fear into strategy. The predator was out there, watching, but the human was ready. The first day of confrontation had ended, but the story of courage had only just begun. By sunrise, the colony would see that fear could be met with resolve, that even the deadliest predator could be confronted head-on by the intelligence, courage, and determination of one human. Elias did not sleep. He studied the faint movements of the trees, the sounds of distant wildlife, the subtle vibrations underfoot. Every detail was important. By remaining vigilant, he prepared not only for survival, but for the challenge ahead. The predator was patient, but so was he. This was no longer just a fight. It was a test of humanity's capacity to face the unknown without succumbing to terror. The colonists watched him from their small shelter, some clutching each other in fear, others studying his calm demeanor in awe. They whispered, quietly, unsure if they should hope or despair. Elias caught their glances and nodded subtly. Courage, he knew, was contagious. If humans were to survive, they had to believe that someone could confront the darkness. Someone could stand against the creature that had claimed so many. As the night deepened, the predator's presence became more palpable. The glowing eyes would appear momentarily, watching from a distance, then vanish like shadows dissolving in the wind. But Elias remained steady. He had learned the first lesson of survival in Zythera. Fear could never guide your actions. Only clarity, observation, and courage could. By the time the twin suns began to rise, casting a faint glow over the alien canopy, Elias had mapped a rough pattern of the predator's hunting territory. He knew its habits, its favored paths, and the subtle cues it left behind. He understood that the coming days would be dangerous, that every step could bring a new challenge, but he also understood that humanity was capable of facing unimaginable threats. This first encounter had set the stage. Elias had survived, and more importantly, he had learned. The predator, for all its speed and cunning, had underestimated the human capacity for patience, intelligence, and courage, and the colony, inspired by his example, now saw a glimmer of hope. One human could confront the terror that everyone feared, and perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could survive against the impossible. The morning light filtered through the dense canopy of Zythera, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Elias Ward moved cautiously among the towering alien trees, his pulse rifle steady in his hands. The colony had begun to recover from the fear that had gripped them the previous day. Survivors whispered of his courage and skill, and some had even volunteered to follow him deeper into the jungle. Elias welcomed their assistance, but understood that fear could easily turn into recklessness. Each volunteer needed to be taught, prepared, and guided. He gathered his small team in a clearing that offered some visibility among the thick vegetation. The colonists' eyes darted nervously around, taking in the alien landscape. Strange plants with iridescent leaves swayed gently despite the lack of wind, and distant calls of unknown creatures echoed through the forest. Elias spoke with calm authority. "Today, we do not just survive. We learn, we observe, and we prepare ourselves to face what comes." Their first task was simple but critical. Elias instructed them to move slowly through the terrain, noting signs of movement, broken branches, and unusual footprints. The colonists hesitated, unsure of what to expect. Their nerves were raw from yesterday's terror, and the shadows seemed to move in ways that unnerved them. Elias remained at the front, scanning constantly, ears tuned to every whisper of sound. The predator was intelligent, and it would adapt quickly if humans acted without thought. Hours passed as the team moved cautiously. Elias pointed out subtle clues. A disturbance in the moss covering the roots of a tree, a faint groove in the soil, and occasional claw marks on trunks. Each observation taught the colonists patience and attention to detail. They began to see that survival on Zythera was not about running blindly, but understanding the patterns of the unknown. The jungle was alive, and its life included the predator they feared. Late in the afternoon, the motion sensors Elias had placed the day before detected movement. The readings were precise but fleeting. The predator was near, observing, perhaps testing them. Elias signaled the team to freeze, gesturing silently. They crouched behind thick roots and low branches, hearts pounding, rifles raised but ready to wait rather than react. Then it appeared, not as a blur, but with deliberate movement. The predator's dark, sinewy body slinked through the underbrush, muscles rippling, eyes glowing faintly in the filtered sunlight. It moved with caution, seemingly aware of the human's presence but unafraid. Elias studied its approach carefully. He noted the predator's pattern. It preferred shadowed paths, avoided open ground unless necessary, and tested its prey before committing to an attack. The predator paused, tilting its head as if evaluating the humans. Elias's mind raced, cataloging every detail. He realized the creature was learning, adapting. Its intelligence was frightening, but it also meant that humanity's own intelligence could be used against it. He whispered instructions to the team, showing them how to use the terrain to their advantage, to stay low, to move with patience, to anticipate rather than react. Suddenly, a branch snapped under the weight of a small animal, or perhaps a decoy. The predator reacted instantly, leaping toward the sound with incredible speed. Elias fired a pulse shot, forcing it to pause and retreat slightly. The colonists gasped, some in awe, others in terror, but Elias remained calm. Each encounter, even a brief one, was an opportunity to learn. The predator would not always strike recklessly. It was methodical, calculating, and Elias intended to use that against it. As night approached, Elias led his team to a high vantage point, a natural platform overlooking the jungle floor. From here, they could observe movement below, track potential patterns, and plan their next steps. The colonists were tense, but they followed his lead. Elias explained his strategy. We do not hunt blindly. We watch, we learn, and we strike only when we understand the predator's actions. Fear will not save us. Knowledge will. The jungle night was alive with strange sounds. Alien creatures called to one another in the distance. Insects produced high-pitched whines, and somewhere, deep in the forest, the predator moved. Elias watched intently, scanning with his binoculars and motion sensors. He noticed subtle vibrations, slight disturbances in foliage that indicated movement even when nothing was visible. The predator was intelligent enough to avoid direct confrontation, testing them, probing weaknesses. In the middle of the night, an alarm from one of the motion sensors blared softly. Elias was instantly alert. He raised his pulse rifle, signaling the colonists to stay still. The sensor readings showed rapid movement approaching from the east. The predator was closing in, but it was also being careful. It wanted to see how the humans would react. Elias took a deep breath and moved forward cautiously, using the shadows to conceal his approach. The predator appeared in a clearing below, glancing in their direction. Its glowing eyes reflected the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. Elias observed its posture, tense but controlled, muscles coiled for potential action. He realized that the predator understood the humans' caution. It respected their intelligence, their careful movement. Unlike previous victims, these humans were not running blindly. Elias signaled to the colonists to stay in position. He fired a series of pulse shots into the ground near the predator, forcing it to adjust its path. Each shot was measured, intended not to injure, but to test reactions. The predator lunged, a shadowy blur of speed and power. Elias had anticipated this. Using his knowledge of its patterns, he moved strategically, guiding the predator toward a narrow passage where their traps were set. The traps activated just as the predator entered the area. Energy nets snapped into place, temporarily immobilizing it. Elias and the team did not celebrate. The creature struggled, adapting quickly, testing the net with its strength and speed. Elias studied every movement, noting its resilience and strategy. This was not a mindless beast. This was a worthy opponent. Through the long night, Elias continued to track and observe the predator. Every interaction provided insight. He learned how it moved in darkness, how it adapted to human tactics, and how it responded to threats. The colonists watched, slowly gaining confidence. They began to see that survival on Zythera required more than courage. It required intelligence, discipline, and unity. By dawn, Elias had gathered a detailed understanding of the predator's behavior. He mapped its hunting territory, recorded its preferences for terrain, and noted its reactions to different stimuli. He prepared the colonists for the coming days, emphasizing patience and observation over aggression. Fear would not guide them. Strategy would. As the twin suns rose over the alien canopy, the colony had its first true sense of hope. The predator had been confronted and studied, and for the first time humanity held knowledge that could turn the tide. Elias addressed the colonists, his voice steady and calm. We have seen what we face. We have learned. We adapt. Today, we do not just survive. We prepare to confront the impossible and show that humans do not cower before fear. The day that followed involved setting controlled traps, learning to move silently, and practicing coordinated maneuvers. Elias guided each colonist personally, showing them how to anticipate the predator's movements and avoid dangerous mistakes. The jungle was unforgiving, But the humans were learning. Each small victory, each observation, each careful step built their confidence. That night, the predator appeared again, watching from a distance. Elias and his team observed silently, learning more about its intelligence and adaptability. They did not attack recklessly. Instead, they noted subtle behaviors, the way it tested the environment, how it responded to sound, and how it evaluated threats. Humanity's patience and intelligence were slowly shifting the balance. The colonists began to understand that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the ability to act with knowledge despite fear. Elias exemplified this principle, remaining calm under pressure, observing, calculating, and guiding others. Each night, they learned a little more, preparing for the confrontation that would determine their survival.
Over the following days, Elias continued this pattern. Observe, record, anticipate, and teach.
The predator remained a constant presence, testing, learning, and adapting. But humanity, through discipline and strategy, began to gain an edge. They moved as a unit, using the terrain to their advantage, and employing traps with precision. Every encounter was a lesson, every observation a step toward survival. By the end of Part 2, Elias had not only survived multiple interactions with the predator, but he had also transformed the colony. What began as a group of terrified individuals had become a disciplined team, capable of understanding and confronting the threat. The predator, once a symbol of absolute fear, was now a challenge that could be faced with intelligence and courage. Elias knew that the final confrontation would require every skill, every ounce of patience and strategy they had learned, but he also knew that humanity was capable of rising to the occasion. Fear had been faced, courage had been tested, and the stage was set for a battle that would prove the strength and resilience of humans in the face of the unimaginable. The jungle of Zythera was quiet in the early morning, yet the silence held a tension thicker than any storm. Commander Elias Ward moved ahead of the small team, alert and careful, every step deliberate. The alien canopy filtered light into dappled patterns on the forest floor, and the air was filled with strange scents, earthy and metallic. After days of careful observation and cautious engagement, the predator had become more than a threat. It was now a challenge, a test of human skill, patience, and courage. Elias had studied every pattern, every clue left by the predator. Broken branches, faint claw marks, disturbed undergrowth. All told a story, and he had learned to read it. The colony's volunteers moved quietly behind him, their nerves taut but disciplined. Elias had trained them to act without panic, to anticipate rather than react, to move like shadows among the alien flora. The predator was fast, intelligent, and adaptive. It would test them, but now humanity had a strategy, and strategy was their strongest weapon. The first sign of the predator came as a subtle vibration underfoot, barely noticeable, but enough for Elias to pause. The team crouched instinctively. He signaled them to stay silent. Motion sensors, strategically placed along the terrain, blinked in response to movement. The readings indicated the predator was near. Its glowing eyes occasionally pierced the shadows, reflecting the filtered sunlight. It moved with purpose, studying them as much as they studied it. Elias whispered instructions, guiding the colonists toward a clearing that had been carefully prepared. Here, traps had been set, energy nets, motion-activated snares, and defensive barriers. They were not meant to kill, but to slow the predator, forcing it into positions where it could be studied and ultimately confronted. The team moved with precision, shadows among shadows, silent and coordinated. The jungle itself became an ally, its towering trees and thick undergrowth providing cover and strategic advantage. Suddenly, the predator appeared at the edge of the clearing. Its dark, muscular form glided through the underbrush, eyes glowing faintly. Elias raised his pulse rifle, but he did not fire immediately. He had learned that patience, observation, and timing were crucial. The predator lunged with incredible speed, testing their reaction. Elias moved precisely, predicting its movement, guiding it toward the traps. The energy nets snapped into place, momentarily immobilizing the predator. It struggled, testing its strength against the barriers, but the design held. Elias observed every reaction, every adjustment it made. The creature was adaptive, intelligent, and relentless, but humans had learned to anticipate. The colonists watched, their fear slowly turning into focused determination. They began to understand that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act with knowledge and strategy despite it. For hours they engaged in this careful dance. The predator would test, retreat, and strike again, each time learning from their actions. Elias adapted constantly, predicting its behavior, repositioning the team, adjusting traps, and using the terrain to their advantage. The alien jungle echoed with movement, the hum of energy rifles, and the faint growls of the predator. It was a battle of intellect as much as strength, and every action carried weight. Elias noticed patterns emerging. The predator preferred elevated paths, moving along branches and vines to observe from above. It tested the humans' response to noise and light, learning their strategies. But humanity had one advantage: adaptability through reason. Elias instructed the colonists to vary their positions, create diversions, and use simulated prey to mislead the predator. Each tactic was executed with precision, gradually forcing the creature into controlled zones where its movements could be predicted. As the day progressed, the predator became increasingly cautious. It was clear it recognized the human's intelligence. Elias had turned fear into strategy, observation into action. The colony, once paralyzed by terror, now moved with purpose. Every trap, every maneuver, every silent step brought them closer to a confrontation where humans could assert control without recklessness. By late afternoon, Elias positioned the team near a narrow canyon within the jungle. The terrain funneled the predator's movement, limiting its ability to strike unpredictably. Energy nets and motion sensors were strategically placed, covering every potential escape route. The colonists were tense but composed, following Elias's guidance to the letter. The predator would approach, and this was the moment to confront it decisively. The predator emerged from the shadows, eyes glowing, muscles coiled like springs ready to launch. Elias moved smoothly, anticipating its strike. Pulse rifles fired in controlled bursts, creating light and sound distractions without panic. The predator lunged, a blur of sinewy power, and was slowed by the first net. It reacted instantly, adjusting its trajectory, dodging the second trap, and testing their defense with calculated precision. Elias remained calm, observing every movement. He had studied this creature for days, and now used that knowledge to guide his actions. He signaled the team to adjust their positions, to use the terrain and traps as allies. The predator struck again, and again. Each attack met with calculated responses. The jungle echoed with the clash of strength and strategy, a tense ballet of predator and human. Hours passed, and the predator began to show signs of fatigue. It had underestimated human intelligence and patience. Elias took note of its reactions, its strategy adapting to their defenses, and used that knowledge to guide the final maneuvers. The predator was powerful, but humans had learned to control the battlefield through observation, discipline, and teamwork. As dusk fell, Elias prepared for the final phase. He and the team had identified a natural amphitheater within the canyon, a place where the predator's movements could be fully contained. Energy nets and barriers were reinforced, and the colonists were positioned strategically. Elias's pulse rifle hummed softly in his hands. This confrontation would not rely on brute force, but on the combination of intelligence, patience, and courage that had defined their approach since day one. The predator appeared, cautious and calculating. It had learned, adapted, and tested them repeatedly. But humans had also learned, adapted, and planned meticulously. Elias moved into position, guiding the predator toward the amphitheater using subtle movements, calculated noises, and controlled bursts of energy fire. The creature followed, lured by instinct and strategy alike. When it entered the amphitheater, the final traps engaged simultaneously. Energy nets and barriers restricted its movement, while motion sensors allowed the team to anticipate every strike. The Predator tested the defenses, lunging with incredible speed, but each movement was predicted and countered. Elias moved with precision, his pulse rifle firing controlled bursts to guide the Predator further into containment. The confrontation reached its peak when the Predator, frustrated and cornered, made one final strike. Elias met it with calculated precision, guiding the creature into a position where it could not escape. The humans remained calm, observing its reactions, understanding its intelligence, and maintaining discipline. Finally, after a tense standstill, the Predator retreated into the jungle, recognizing the humans' resolve and the futility of further direct attacks. The team exhaled collectively, relief mixed with awe. They had faced what everyone feared, and through intelligence, patience, and courage, they had survived and controlled the situation. Elias's calm leadership had turned fear into strength, strategy into survival, and terror into triumph. The colony now had hope, and more importantly, they had learned that humanity could confront the unimaginable and prevail. Elias addressed the team as the sun dipped below the alien canopy. "We have faced fear and survived. This Predator is not a monster to cower from. It is a challenge, and through intelligence and courage we have shown that humans do not retreat in the face of the unknown. Today, we have proven that we are more than prey. We are capable of confronting even the deadliest threats and standing tall." The jungle, once a place of fear and uncertainty, now held a new meaning. It was a proving ground where humans had tested their limits, adapted, and triumphed. The colonists, inspired by Elias's leadership and example, moved with renewed confidence, understanding that survival depended on courage, intelligence, and unity. Night fell on Zathera once more, but it was no longer a night of terror. The Predator had retreated, and the humans had proven themselves. Elias remained vigilant, knowing that intelligence and patience would always be necessary in such an unpredictable environment. The colony was safe for now, and humanity's ability to confront fear head-on had been established. By the end of the third part, the humans had faced the Predator directly, survived, and gained knowledge that would ensure future encounters could be managed. Elias's courage and strategy had transformed the colony from a group of fearful survivors into a disciplined, capable team, ready to face the challenges of Zathera and beyond. The Predator, for all its power and intelligence, had underestimated one crucial factor: the human capacity to learn, adapt, and confront the impossible. Elias had shown that even in the most terrifying circumstances, humans could stand tall, face fear, and prevail. The story of courage, patience, and intellect would be remembered by the colony for generations, a testament to humanity's enduring strength and resilience in the face of the unknown.